I don't know if you guys are ready for peak druid form, but this is what peak druid form looks like.
Call. Ah.
What's going on? My name is Rounded Tic Tac, and welcome back to the Druid Ultimate Version Prime Time Pulverizer Druid. I said Druid twice. 2.0. This build is something I've been working on for 217 hours. How do I know that? Well, because there's a website, D4 Armory, that lets you know your total playtime. I've really only played this character, so I've spent 217 hours getting this character to level 100 and figuring out everything in between that makes this build work so damn well. As you guys saw, this build hits like an absolute truck. We already posted a Pulverize Druid build. I will link it right there. I'm going to cover the vast majority of stuff that was in that video, but I posted that video around level 75. I'm now level 100. I learned a lot more stuff in the game, and I even took some stuff that you guys left in my previous video's comment section and implemented it into this. We will talk about all of that and some more stuff and exactly what stats and everything that I'm 100% positive you should be looking for on your druid character. Probably for any build in the game, but we'll talk about that later. So let's get into this. This is the updated Druid 2.0 Pulverizer build. Everything I've learned and everything I've implemented in this build to make it feel a lot better. Let's go. So Pulverizer Druid, one of the better builds in the entire game. It allows you to push. I've currently pushed and cleared on solo Nightmare tier 70. It's been very, very difficult to do that. You kind of need to change your build around if you want to push those super high end things, just because the survivability on my current setup isn't the highest. It is set for kind of quality of life and damage, but on the same token, there's no reason that you need to push those high Nightmare tiers. And this is not a build I'd bring to Uber Lilith either. This is a build that allows you to farm so damn fast and kill everything on the map and be basically unkillable all the way up to that Nightmare tier 70. That the build is just plays itself. It's so much fun to play. I really am enjoying this build, and since I like it so much, we're going to switch it up and do something else. There's a poll I left in my community tab if you guys want to check it out to see what build we should do next. Currently, Werewolf Companion build is winning. So what has changed since the previous update? Well, a decent amount, but not too much. If I'm being completely honest, a lot of my gear is best in slot for the most part, and anything that needs to be changed or re-rolled is so ridiculously expensive at this point that I've kind of given up. Until something just happens to fall in my lap, we are using what we have here. Now, how does Druid work, and how does Druid end up doing so much damage? We are scaling crit damage, vulnerable damage, which is something I learned from the previous video and we will talk about once we get to the Paragon tree, and lastly, crit damage, earth damage, and more crit damage. Basically, if you guys don't know, vulnerable damage and crit damage are the top two modifiers for any build in the entire game. Is that healthy for the game? No, I don't think so. That's a video for another day, but that's currently what it is. I previously did not think that Druid had a great way to apply vulnerability. I was so goddamn wrong that I can't even believe it. Thank you again for the comment section to pointing that out. I read the Paragon tree board wrong, and that we'll talk about that when we get to the Paragon tree. So keep that in mind as we go over the items. There hasn't been much change to the actual build, except I've added more survivability and taken out some overpower stuff because I'm pushing harder and harder tiers of Nightmare stuff. Having an overpower every 20 seconds isn't as powerful as being able to tank 3 more hits before dying at level 70, 75. So that's the main changes to the build, but we're going to talk about how I got my damage up to 10 million. And I know that's why you guys are here, so let's talk about that first. Build wise, we're going to kind of skip the exotics. You guys know about them: Insatiable Fury and Vasily's Prayer. These are the 2 exotics you need to make this build feel great but not work. You can run this build without these things, but they are very beneficial to you having them in the build. Another complaint about I had on my last video is I didn't show my gear. I did this on purpose, but I'll show it now and we'll talk about why I have this stuff on here. I will also link, or there will be a picture as I'm editing this with the absolute best in slot rolls for each piece of gear. So keep that in mind. This is what I have. This is what I'm looking for. This is what you should be aiming for. Something between these two. Number one, critical strike chance is very, very good for a Pulverized Druid because of the Earthen Might key passive. This lucky hit is not very good. You want something like plus 4 ranks to pulverize. It really increases your damage because it scales off your core skill. You can see our pulverize is hitting for 17,000 damage. And of course, the most key thing you want on a Pulverized Druid is that lucky hit chance here. I took a little hit and not have a great second slot to have this max roll on lucky hit chance. The aspect here, just going to go over it quickly because we already covered this in the previous video, is just critical strikes deal more damage to crowd control enemies. Our pants here, speaking of pants, and the gems, our previous gems were blue sapphires for damage reduction while fortified. I changed them as leveling because we want more maximum health to help us do slightly more damage with this aspect right here. Our core skills deal damage to fortify. Fortify scales off your base health. So in theory, that should be increasing our damage. However, I do need to change this if I want to continue pushing tiers. The extra health is great. We do more damage. It looks good, but having the damage reduction is too important once you start upping tiers. But you can run this exact build all the way to 65 and be fine. Be absolutely fine. For our legs, you guys are looking for things like total armor in werebear form, damage reduction while injured. I have trample here because I thought this was a cool stat to have because trample kind of hits like a truck if you get crit on it. So it was cool. And we have total armor. If you guys don't know, armor is king at the moment. Resistances are secondary. For our boots, always look for something with maximum move speed. For this build in particular, you kind of need this high intelligence roll. You can have it on your pants or your boots here. This allows us to unlock certain aspects in our Paragon tree that we would normally not be able to get there. Maybe in all stats, we'll be able to get a very high rolled all stats, might be able to cut the buck, but currently I haven't found those boots. This is currently what I'm running. And the most common question I get on my build is not how do I keep my spirit up? Well, this is the start of it. You can see on a lot of my gear is spirit cost reduction. This is a 9.2, which is a pretty high roll. Look for these on your boots. For our weapon, we changed gems here as well. We had blue, we went green. Critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. As I said earlier, vulnerable is the best scaling damage in the entire game, followed by crit damage, followed by core damage. I believe that is the order it goes. And you can see we have a pretty damn dangerous weapon here with those values. 54 out of 55 for core, 70 out of 70 for vulnerable, 186 willpower, which increases our damage by a decent amount. Plus, you want a stat stick like this for early levels in your Paragon board. And then we have extra critical strike damage at 51%. The imprint here, of course, is Pulverize. It does a shockwave, the most important imprint for the entire build. That's how it works. That literally build sucks if you do not have that. Keep that in mind. Then over here on our necklace, again, we have spirit cost reduction. So we're at a almost 30% from just those two items. We have cooldown reduction because we want our Grizzly Rage up at all times. We have 3 ranks to Defiance. I believe this is best in slot. There might be something better. I'm not sure. Maybe in Venom, if you're running some sort of poison build, might work. And then we have Earth Skill damage, which is an additive. Vulnerable damage, if it can roll on this, I'm not 100% sure, would be the best in slot here. Your core skills deal up to 45% damage to our Fortify. This is a very key modifier for this build since we're stacking so much health in Fortify. 45% of it scales very nicely. Then we come down here to our rings. More maximum spirit, more resource generation, and then more lucky hit chance and vulnerable damage. Since our entire build relies on lucky hit chance, you want it on everything that could possibly roll it. This is another reason why my build looks like it never runs out. I believe I'm sitting at 33% lucky hit chance, 32.1, which is pretty high for a druid. So we have 32.1. So 1 in every 3 autos has a basically 100% chance, because I'm hitting multiple enemies, to refill and proc the Earthen Might passive. So keep that in mind. Down here, our last ring is damage to slowed, which is okay, not great. 6.9 critical strike chance, pretty good. Resource generation and more lucky hit. And then the duration of Grizzly Rage is increased by 5. This is to keep this up to a 17.5 seconds. It's at 42, so there's really only like a 20-second cooldown on it. Plus, we can get it lower with our boons. So those are the changes I made. I added more lucky hit. I added more resource generation. I changed all my gems to red, and I changed my weapon gems to green. Those are the key changes I made, and I got as much lucky hit on my build as humanly possible. Of course, my gear isn't perfect, but it's pretty damn good. For our spirit boons, nothing changed here. I did go here to play around with a poison build, but I'm not ready to show that build yet. We have damage reduced from elites. We have critical strike damage. In my opinion, on Druid, as long as your critical strike chance is 25%, go critical strike damage. If it's lower than 25%, go critical strike chance with talons here. Down here we have Obsidian Slam. Take this off if you are pushing hard content. Use Masochistic instead if you are pushing hard content, but for just goofing around and clearing dungeons, this is a lot of fun to have. And then of course, Calm Before the Storm. Everything that is a nature skill has a chance, has a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of our Grizzly Rage, which is our main form of damage. That is the build, or those are the items. That's the boons. Let's talk about the abilities, which I'm pushing every wrong button possible. Not much has changed here, but since we are having some best in slot gear, we have been able to move around a few points, and I decided to get rid of 2 perks for more survivability as I'm pushing harder nightmare tiers. We are running Earth Spike because we can with the helmet. We came down here and we finally put our last point into Wild Impulses for the complete 15% damage now that we have better resource generation. As many points as you can into Pulverize, into the stun. If you're pushing hard content, do Primal Pulverize. It'll keep you alive a lot better. We have Crit Chance by Predatory Instincts for close targets. That's always great to have. Down here, Earthen Bulwark. Do not go this Fortify perk. Go the damage perk. The reason we're going to the damage perk is A, it does a lot of damage. There's actually a build that kind of abuses an exploit and makes this cast twice. And people are hitting for like 58 million damage using a defensive skill. It's kind of nuts, but it's a real janky playstyle. Not really my thing. I may cover it, not sure. Then down here, we are taking Ancestral Fortitude. You do not need this unless you're pushing 65 and above, just so you don't end up getting 2-shot by poison, 2-shot by fire, 2-shot by shadow damage. This is great to have, but not necessary if you're on a lower thing. Then we have Nature's Reach. Because of our Shockwave is AoE, we want to be able to do more damage to further targets. If you're pushing hard content, maybe use Cyclone Armor instead of Hurricane, or maybe use this modifier, a Savage Hurricane, to be a little bit more tanky, but for easier stuff, we are running this for Vulnerable Chance plus a little bit more damage. Then down here, we're taking the same Earth skill passives. Then we are going over here to Trample and for the Spirit on Trample. This is where we changed our build. I am not a huge fan of Overpower anymore. I was a big fan of it at the start, not so much anymore. We took away Provocation. Every 20 seconds, 1 Overpower. Doesn't really seem that great, and plus I'm almost positive that regular crits do more damage than overpower crits anyway. So even when you do get one, yes, they stun enemies, which is nice, but besides that, there's not a huge benefit to having them. So I've gone off overpower. I'm on to crit and vulnerable. Then down here we have Resonance, which is allows us to swap this Earthen Bulwark and Pulverize to be able to get a bunch of extra damage. We have Natural Disaster for more damage. We have Circle of Life, which is another new perk that I fully invested in to keep us alive. This heals you every time we use a nature skill, which is Pulverize. Then down here, of course, we're taking Grizzly Rage and Earthern Might. All of these perks work really well together. We covered it in a previous video, and I just got better and better to do it. But the real thing I want to talk about is the Paragon Board. Specifically, this right here. This is in this spot for a reason, but we're going to talk about the Paragon Board a little bit more when we go in a minute. So I learned some things. Number one, when I first made my original Pulverizer build, I read this perk incorrectly. Like, I read it, but I didn't comprehend what I read. What I read was when an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable. This can only happen every 20 seconds. That's what I read. That is not what this says. What this does say is when an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. This cannot happen more than once every 20 seconds per enemy. That means every single enemy you hit becomes vulnerable. That's number one. You hit them once with Pulverize. Now they're all vulnerable. Now they're all crowd controlled. Since we're using a staff, we gain a huge damage boost on our second hit. Plus they're vulnerable and they die. They die. Every single time. It's great. It's fantastic. Run exploit. but don't run it here until you are level 100. When you're not level 100, run it here. It is so important to have on your build. You want it as the first glyph that you can actually fit. Now, before we get into the full build, I just want to talk about how vulnerable needs to be changed. If you ever played Borderlands 2, I believe, they had something called slag, which is basically vulnerable, and it sucked. Every single build turned into the same thing. Which build can apply vulnerable the fastest and best, because it is a flat damage increase to all damage sources. It is stupid, and if your build cannot apply vulnerable decently and you're trying to push hard content, it's ridiculous. Not only is vulnerable one of the best things in the game, it is hands down the best damage multiplier in the entire game. Everything in the game can scale off of vulnerable damage. Everything. No matter what kind of build you're doing, bleed, dot, poison, crit. I mean, basically everything's crit and vulnerable damage. That's another video for another day, but it's insane. So trust me, put exploit here, change it later. But let's talk about the finalized build here. Not going to go too much longer. We got 4 minutes before we hit the 20-minute mark, and I want to beat it. So we come up here, we take extra damage from end maximum life. Our first glyph is going to be Earth and Sky, flat 15% extra damage, plus it scales with crowd control and vulnerable enemies, which we apply all the time. So this is really, really strong to have in that first slot. But put exploit here once you're higher level. Then we come up here and we grab the survival instincts tree. This is still the same tree as last time, but I changed a little bit, and the link down in the description is fully complete. It follows this thing to a T, 100%, correct items, correct Paragon tree, correct points, everything. So keep that in mind. The link will be down in the description below. Over here, we grab the legendary node survival instincts. We come up here, we grab grizzly. For this, we grab here and we go to spirit. This is 77.2% extra critical strike damage with our core skill. Since our main and really only damage dealing thing is our core skill, we want that desperately. I came down here for these bonus points, but don't do this until you're max level. These are just bonus points that I put here because I could. Don't go right. We come up north here and we hit these. This is how you stay having spirit as a druid. Maximum spirit, 2 spirit on kill, 1 spirit on kill, 1 spirit on kill. Grab this tree, third, second even. It makes Pulverize Druid feel so much better. This is the Ancestral Guidance legendary node, and this allows us to do more damage every 5 seconds when we use 75 spirit, which is like 3 pulverizes. The next glyph we are using is Undaunted. This increases our damage while fortified. We're always fortified, so that's good. More core skill damage right here. Then don't go right, come back down to our second tree and cut back to the right. Grab the Earth Sign node here. You can stay away from these overpower nodes. I just grabbed them because I didn't know where else to put my points. Come down here and come to Oppress. Oppress is more damage to crowd controlled since we're constantly crowd controlling. This is always on. And then to Earthern Devastation down here. Then come back up here, grab this resistance for free, and then we go into werebear damage. Since we're constantly in werebear form, this is always up, and we always gain 40% extra damage. Come down here to Earthen Power, go up here to Crushing Earth. I haven't been able to hit this dexterity thing, but I'm close, so I'm gonna maybe, like I said, my willpower, I don't think I need it on my staff anymore. I need 610. I feel like I'm pretty damn close. Maybe in all stats will get me to both of these. That's something to keep in mind. And then we go back up here and we come this way. And this is where we put our exploit glyph once we're at 100. And this allows us to get all of these dexterity nodes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dexterity nodes for a total of basically 40% vulnerable damage. Plus we apply vulnerable, which is the strongest thing in the game. Lastly, I take the last couple of points we have here. And because we do suffer in single target damage, I grab these 2 elite things and we are here for damage to elites and magic skill damage. Woo! That's the whole build. Just want to talk to you about one more thing, just to prove to you how strong vulnerable damage is. I took a few points away, some of those extra points I was talking about that really don't do too much, and I took out 6 points of exploit, right? I took those 18 points and I came all the way down here. What I gained was 32 damage to elites plus 20% damage on earth skills, all the way over here to 7.5 crowd control, 7.5 crowd control, 30 crowd control, maximum life, which goes to our fortify, and 7.5 crowd control. I grabbed all of these nodes, but I lost out on 6 nodes to vulnerable damage. Let me tell you, or try to guess, which one was better. Did you guess vulnerability damage? Because you'd be right. That is the correct answer. Vulnerability damage is just absolutely insane. Try to get it on your weapons, try to get it on your gear. And that is the full breakdown for Druid 2.0. Hit for up to 10 million on this build. Hit on average from 4 to 6 to 4 to 8 million. The build absolutely trucks. Try it out. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you guys like this video, if there's anything you would like me to change or make it faster or quicker, please leave a comment. I'm trying to get into the Diablo scene. Thank you so much for the support on the previous Druid build. Hopefully this one does well as well. And if you guys want to check me out, I'll be live at twitch.tv/roundedtictac. We're going to be changing up to a companion build, I think, to see if we can get that going. Should be a lot of fun, and I'd love to see you guys there. Thank you so much. I will see you guys on the next one. Tic Tac out. Bye-bye, y'all.